Water is so vital to all of us. And one of the big entrees, as you might imagine, is drinking water. You know, my interests are watersheds, the full hydrologic system, you know. But how do you get there? If you go in with some formula on flow and infiltration and evapotranspiration, somebody's going to yawn or throw you out. But if you go in on drinking water, you got everybody's attention. You cannot go into a village of this world, and if you do a right assessment of community perceived needs, real needs, you know, values, aspirations, water will come up. We need water. We have too much water. With floods, it's droughty. The water has pathogens, pesticides. You know, something of water will come up. And so, in one sense, it is easy. But then where do you go from there? So this is a bit about making that link early on, the public health and the watershed health, because it's often an evolution of a people. They're either coming in from one and move to the other, or vice versa. But it's a beautiful thing to see them come together. And of course, as you can imagine, much more commonly, it starts with the drinking water aspect, and then it can be projected out into the entire ecosystem. So just by way, very brief of background, this is our station, our research station. We have a couple thousand acres out north of Auburn, Alabama, where we have about 600 ponds. But it's the School of Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Aquatic Sciences. And then within that is the International Center for Aquaculture and Aquatic Environments that I've been working in for a number of years. Starting long before I came, back in the 30s, and working now in a little over 100 countries for about 70 years. So I'm riding big coattails with a lot of great colleagues, faculty and staff. And one thing we did, starting in '92, we had an EPA grant when EPA was more well endowed than they are now, and they were giving out grants to states to start this citizen science or community-based watershed water monitoring. So that was my first foray into this in a formal sense, and we've had our 22nd birthday here. So we've seen over 6,000 people come in, about 370 different community groups who are now voluntarily, no money whatsoever involved, monitoring 800 water bodies over 2,600 sites, some with not missing a month for 10, 15, 20 years. And the most wonderful sets of data, useful for science, but useful for management, useful for education, useful for advocacy, and so on and so forth. So the Alabama context is where we cut our teeth. And it's much like the developing world, not to panic too much, but it was ranked number 50 in the nation when we began for environment. And it was much more a policy, very, very weak, non-existent policy, and just a who cares kind of attitude. But you know, we've really seen a groundswell of interest. Our methodologies we won't get into, but you probably have come across these if you're involved in any of these kind of volunteer efforts, or if you are in the sciences here. But the water chemistry, the stream biomonitoring, and the bacteriological monitoring are our big three in the States. And overseas, we've worked in about a dozen countries in other aspects of soil erosion, suspended solids in water, other things. In Peru, where we work, they really wanted an emphasis on arsenic because that was a relevant variable. So we will adjust. We have a kind of a common denominator where everybody uses that same test kit, because we have invested a lot of time and money to get EPA approved quality assurance plans. So what we're doing is we're a lot of water type, fun in the stream, critters in the creek, you know, engage the kids, engage adults. It's wonderful stuff. But to go to the next level and say we stand by the data, that's a huge step, and it's very time consuming. You shouldn't get into it lightly. But because we were at the university and we had the labs, we were able to do all the blind tests and meet the 24 elements of EPA's quality assurance approvals, and we covet those because they're very difficult to get. The online database is another key component to what we do, because anybody, anywhere, from an internet cafe or any place they can get to the internet now, can enter and access data and share it and analyze it, graph it, and that helps a lot. We have a threefold action plan, one being environmental ed, both formal and non-formal. That is, you know, the conversation under the tree about what they're seeing, trends and conditions. The other being a little more formal with school curricula. We've developed some that we've got in various languages. A second big action prong is the protection and restoration. You know, get wet, get muddy, and you know, protect the good, restore the bad. You know, we have several little simple mantras, great examples. We won't take the time today to dig in, but and the third is the advocacy and the policy work. Why not try for those higher level ordinances and laws and ideas that will take a case, a specific example that's working, and really formally project it onto a much wider swath of planet Earth. So with those things that we developed stateside, we saw the invitations to take it internationally. And these are through a variety of non-governmental organizations and governmental. So we had fairly large grants from the U.S. Agency for International Development, or the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, or Heifer International, Christian Children's Fund, Foundation for Conservation in Food and Energy. Anywhere we can find it, from little mom and pop foundations on up to, you know, multi-million-dollar grants. So some of the pictures here are just kind of going clockwise, upper right, Philippines, and then Lake Titicaca, Peru, northern Thailand, over to Brazil, in a droughty area of Minas Gerais, Brazil, and Veracruz, Mexico. These places, collectively, we've been in for many years. And so, as I mentioned, the newest is this invitation to go into Kenya. And I understand, you probably have not been at Calvin long enough, but I believe Wangari Maathai spoke at Calvin. Does anybody know that to be a fact? I believe she was here. Wangari Maathai was a wonderful lady, born and raised in the Kenyan highlands. Back in the 50s, before there was Peace Corps, just the year before there was Peace Corps, she got a scholarship to study in the U.S. via John Kennedy, then Senator Kennedy, soon to be President Kennedy. She got her doctorate. She was going back to Nairobi to enter a career of academia, but saw such environmental devastation she couldn't turn away. So she got into forestry and planting trees, and in so doing started organizing women's groups and generally volunteer groups, and started planting trees, and unveiled a lot of corruption in her country right up to the top, right to the president. So she was regularly in prison, beaten, had several assassination attempts on her life. For whatever reason, whenever she got out of prison, she planted a tree. And she didn't stop. So bottom line is, she went on to win the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize in 2007 for her work. It's absolutely phenomenal what she's done. Something in the neighborhood of 50 million trees through her efforts and these volunteer groups. And so, as you might imagine, as those trees went in, and this is one of our key watersheds, it's the upper Tana River. So we're talking fairly high elevation, Mount Kenya's snow-capped, at least for now, and a lot of this land had been deforested for tea plantations or just to harvest the valuable hardwood or to graze. And so a lot of it now is coming back. And as these trees were planted, lo and behold, the water came back too. And I think she would even admit, they weren't even thinking about that so much. But as this ecosystem began to become restored, the biodiverse aspects, the water aspects, and you know, the way everything is interrelated, they saw this. So when they began to tout that as a success, some of the big funders said, well, that's all anecdotal. You need to quantify how the water's coming back. Is it coming back in quality, quantity, both? In what ways? You know, and so that's where then they realized to take this to the next level. They had the tree thing down, they had the volunteer groups down, they have a lot going on for them, but they admittedly didn't know squat about water. So they started poking around, and I got a call. So I was very gratified and privileged to be invited. And we started with some money from this Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, and some EPA money. And we are now in kind of a 2-visit-a-year pilot project to layer the community-based water monitoring on this very well-established platform that Wangari Maathai and now her daughter, Wanjira Maathai, are continuing. Kikuyu are in the uplands. And so that was the community, I should say communities that we started. Because our proposal is fairly ambitious. In 1 year, it is to establish 100 monitoring sites. And through our workshops in monitoring, reach at least 160 people. So that's fairly tall order. But again, with all the groundwork being laid by the Greenbelt staff, the Greenbelt movement is well staffed, and they did a lot of the groundwork. So we worked in these local, what they call polytechnic schools. They're kind of glorified high schools, early vo-tech kind of school, even community college. It's kind of a hybrid of what we have in the States. But they opened their doors for us, and some of their students sat in the workshop. And we began to talk about waterborne disease, because our approach, again, remember the entree to Watersheds is drinking water often. So we thought long and hard. We opened up our little menu. We could start with this variable or this, and they said, let's work with the pathogens. Let's start with the bacteriological monitoring. So that's what we did. And you know, it's easy to talk to people in remote parts, villages and remote parts of the world about waterborne disease, because the infant mortality, morbidity rates are up. They know E. coli, they know typhoid, cholera, dengue, malaria. They know the waterborne diseases, and they don't necessarily know all the life cycles or the remediations, or even, you know, from their worldview, why this is happening. We heard this last night. You know, the connection of the spiritual world and the physical world is much different. You know, we're much more this reductionist, scientist type, and we have a lot to learn. As you know, our speaker said, we have a lot to learn from those cultures that see the world a little differently than we do. And I've been doing this for many years, and believe me, I've been jaw dropped, eyes like platters, learned a lot. But we start with some basic stuff. We've cooked down some complicated taxonomy to talk about a family tree of bacteria, because our methods, you'll see we're going to be measuring blue dots, which are E. coli, one of the fecal coliforms, which are in the family, you know, the larger group of coliforms. But there's non-fecal coliforms, which are relatively harmless, in fact, beneficial in soil. And then there's some fecal non-E. coli coliforms, which are very pathogenic. So it's a little tricky to sort it out, but the tree kind of eases the long scientific names and the taxonomy that you might get inflicted on if you take a microbiology course. But that's what an E. coli looks like under high magnification, nasty little boogers. But there was a Christian man who's still around. In fact, I talked with him last week. He's at Goshen College, a Mennonite school in Goshen, Indiana. And he invented this method called the Coloscan Easy Gel method. It revolutionized what we can do in the field. This test is identical, virtually, to what costs $30, $40, $50 a sample in a controlled lab. And it can be done in the field for about $1, $1.50 a sample. And we did all that blind test. We were the first in the US to get EPA approval. And they couldn't believe the results. I mean, these were blind tests. You take yours, I'll take mine, we'll lay it out later. And the results were strikingly similar enough to where we got that approval. So that's the kind of equipment that we lug into the field. And we had, that bottom graph is just a side-by-side blind test of the standard methods, E. coli monitoring, and our methods. So we cook it down. You know, if you look at an EPA or a World Health Organization thing on what's safe to drink or whole body contact, it gets rather convoluted. There's words like geometric mean, and you know, they test 2 weekdays and 2 weekend days a month, and they, you know, add their Aunt Tilly's birthday and take the log transformation of that. We put it down to a traffic light, you know, red light, green light, yellow light, you know. And in spite of all even fairly major changes in recent years, these numbers hold pretty true. If you're under 200 E. coli per 100 milliliters of water, it's relatively safe. You can swim there. We won't close a beach in the US over that. If you get above 600, it's almost always manifest in human illness. And it is a red line that works virtually with all humans. So we have clung to these, to these numbers. And with that, we started this workshop. And, you know, in some cases, there was a question in the previous breakout about engaging people and is it relevant and will they come? This is science, you know, this is something very foreign. Greenbelt had to take like 1 in 5 that wanted to come to that, in that door. They had to be very selective, and it hurt me a little bit, you know, because you don't usually see such a groundswell early. And some of these people have, you know, high school or even a little higher degrees, but many are farmers with elementary education or thereabouts. And Greenbelt, you know, is very democratic. They didn't just go for an elite group or whatever. But bottom line is we had a real strong interest, and it's going to take us years to service, if you will, everybody that even wants to get in and get certified and be a part of this. And this strong desire to be a part and publicly, personally participate in natural resource management is, in some parts of the world, very strong. It's just a vacuum waiting for you to fill. And so we're very gratified that this seems to be the case in Kenya. And for all that the Brits did in Kenya, they did leave literacy and a love of education. And that's definitely clear, even in these small villages up around Mount Kenya. So we brought in a lot of the Greenbelt staff. This is Joseph Munyao. And we started with some basic stuff, like how do you use the pipette? Because everything was foreign. Everything they reluctantly touched, like, am I going to break it, or am I going to be humiliated? And it was so cool because we were kind of moving between Swahili, Kikuyu, English, bopping around, and it just kind of flowed, you know, like how, you know, do you really understand this? And we have a special, fairly high-level training for trainers, so that wasn't it, but our staff, because they went through my workshop earlier, kind of were familiar, and they really, really smoothed the way, and it wasn't just dominated by 1 or 2 of us. Njogu Kahare is the Greenbelt kingpin. He's my main contact, and he was in a discussion about where they want to sample, and then we were doing how you choose sites. And Joel, who took my course last summer, will be happy to know, I learned a new thing the Kenyans taught me. You know all those 5 criteria for site selection? They put it in a mnemonic that makes sense. I've, for 20 years, never had one, and it's called class. And they said, why don't you use class? And I thought, for 20 years, why haven't I used class? So we drew that hand, and your sites need to be convenient, legal, accessible, safe, and strategic. Spell class on your hand. And those are good sites, you know. Where do we monitor? How do we monitor? So we started getting into the background of all that, and I walked away with a neat new tool. Then we hit the field for days, and the roads are terrible, so it took a long time, because these people were scattered over about 300 square miles. And they said, well, I'll be waiting, you come. Well, yeah, easier said than done. We, you know, bounced the teeth out of our head getting to one place or another. But we spent days, and we went to these little reservoirs where they get their drinking water from open water, streams. And, you know, you just love to see that scientist eye, come on, you know. Like, I am doing something precise. I am so involved here. And this is my data. I own this data. And this is my watershed. And I drink out of this, so I better well know if it's safe or not. And old Wycliffe here, he's another Greenbelt staff. He's a funny guy. He's a very charismatic guy. And somebody's a god, like, raise the roof when he gets the hooting and hollering. And he turned into a little teacher here, grabbing these local guys. Now, here's how you do it. And he made sure that they did it well. So we had to divvy up to cover even what we did, you know, because we got that 100-site mandate here. And we did some drinking water. These are like artisanal wells. This is just natural pressure for where they tapped a mountain spring and conveyed it. So we got the drinking water. We had about 50% women in the group, which was very encouraging. And then in the middle of it all, the skies just opened up and pouring. And they said, well, I guess we got to leave. And we said, come on, you can sample. So they got out there with their coats, and we were grabbing all the last samples. And we ended with this lovely rainbow to bless our work for the day. And that turned out to be very instructive. And Joseph, he's a GIS specialist. He had his GPS unit, and we precisely tracked. So he did all the mapping even before we left the site. He's phenomenally gifted. So this was, you know, the fledgling map, the green dots, where we were sampling. So we did have a very strategic cover. This is 20 kilometers. So we're talking about 30 by 30 just for this part. And there's like 4 others that we have on the agenda to do. So it's a fairly ambitious thing. So we got to this Youth Polytechnic. And they said, yeah, sure, use our facility, because they had the incubator. There's one place where you pour the plate and then you gotta cook it for a while, you know, body temperature 30 hours. So I would have dragged those incubators, but they said, no, let's engage the Polytechnic so they feel a part. And so then we took all those bottles, those little bottles we sampled in the field, and everybody was a part of pouring that out. We got out the chalk, cleared the chairs away, and with the community, we drew the rivers, okay? So here's where you want to blow your mind. Fly like an eagle over this 300 square mile, because you got all the rivers right there in the classroom, and then just turn your eyes and see this microscopic critter that is in the water that you could never see. So they kind of got that, almost the infinitely large and infinitely small in one look, because what you do is you draw the rivers, and then they all said, no, my creek, you know, it's not that tile, it's over to this tile, you know, so, okay. So we erased the chalk, and we worked with them until they were satisfied. Yes, this is my watershed, and these are all the little trips, and I can tell you, I live here, I go to church here, this is where we shop, this is, you know, whatever. So we got the community very involved in this watershed map, and it was, you know, size of this room. And that's an awful lot of fun just in and of itself. Then we put the data sheets down on each of the sites. So you can see that's a very strategic coverage of that particular watershed. And then we bring out the plates, and we lay the plates down so you can walk the watershed and see the E. coli, okay? And so it took a little back and forth, like what is an E. coli and so on. But they got that from slide images and examples prior to. So they were primed and ready. So here was one example of the watershed, the data forms, and the plates. And then everybody had at it. And they started counting. Well, what was of interest is before the rains, you know, you could see the spot. And then all of a sudden, oh, this is when it started raining. And here was one real close. One site, this is when the rain began. Before the rain, same river, just downstream, after the rain. And what was amazing to me, you always get these stories, you know, that kind of just take your breath away. But one of the community leaders who's been an ag officer for his whole career, and he's retired, he came to me when he saw this. He just locked in on this, you know, rain, rain, no rain. And he came to me in a whisper because he's a respected leader in that village. And he said, "Do you mean there's E. coli in the rain? You know, is it coming from the sky? You know?" And I thought, now that's not a bad hypothesis to start with, but now we're going to talk about runoff. Now we're going to talk about land use. Now we're going to talk about deforestation and erosion. And I said, no, it does not come from the sky. And he said, yeah, it comes from us. It comes from our latrines. It comes from our cattle. It comes from unsustainable livestock production systems. And we said, yeah. And so, you know, we started to buzz on that. And so sampling through that rainfall event was the key way to bring out an amazing principle of ecosystems and runoff and how pathogens move through a system, where they originate. Because E. coli, maybe I didn't cover it, maybe you never had micro or whatever, but E. coli is only from the intestine of a warm-blooded animal. It can only come from humans, livestock, or wildlife. And it can come from any or all of those and be a problem for many or all of those, but they're not free living. And so when you find them, you are guaranteed that you have a fecal contamination issue. And this is 1 milliliter of water. Remember the red light? It was 600 per 100 milliliters of water. That's tens of thousands per 100 milliliter of water. This is like quadruple red light. And some were saying, you know what, I drink that. Or I know a guy who does drink that. And his water looks like my water, but you're telling me, you know, there's stuff in here that we can't see that we really have to be cognizant of. And is this why my cousin got so deathly ill last year? So it started bringing in the whole public health thing, but connected to the watershed thing, you know? So this is where, you know, all that good old-fashioned ecology just comes in. So that group, I just backed off, and I watched them go for an hour or more. And the Kikuyu and Swahili was just flying, you know, just wide open, like, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, I'm good. Aha, you're not good, you know. And some of the ladies, you know, they were protesting, wait, mine was after the rain, don't you know? And, you know, this makes a difference, and why does it make a difference, and so on. So, and then we just ended with some longer-term data that we've collected from other community groups where sites started out good with green lights, and then they had a serious problem running reds 90 to nothing, and then we did things on the land and brought those reds back down into greens. We have case studies. They might be from Thailand or Mexico or Alabama or the Philippines, but we've got wonderful success stories of people taking charge of their watershed, learning cause and effect, learning land use impacts on water, and then coming up with solutions that make sense from within the community. So that's how we were leaving them. And just to wrap it up here a little bit, incentives for monitoring. This kind of comes out of the course we teach, but as Rob said and others, you know, there's got to be mutualism here. Why? I mean, you might say, and I would even agree if you said, there's already mutualism. I mean, they were excited, they were learning, they were feeling like they were becoming scientists, they got something brand new, very relevant to their family's health. But according to Njogu, you know, we could tweak that a little more. So we started, you know, this notion we've coined here, actually a Filipino friend of mine did, making space for volunteerism. These are busy people that have tight margins of survival, you know, and volunteering for you means not doing something on the farm that makes money. You know, you've got to have some trade-offs, economic trade-offs, to make space for volunteerism. That is, if they are more food secure or have a slightly greater income because of this activity that you weave into your watershed monitoring, you will see even a stronger buy-in on volunteer water testing. So we tie it to livelihoods. And I'd love to take another hour to say how important beekeeping is to this culture. But I've just written a chapter on it with Njogu. he's a master, he's a beekeeper, I'm a beekeeper, and his bees are all Africanized, so that probably goes without saying, but they do it a very different way. We use these Langstroth hives, they use these hanging top bar hives or hollow logs, but honey gathering among the Kikuyu greatly predates agriculture. Honey is part of the bride price. If a man wants a woman, there's got to be 20 liters of honey on the table to the daddy-in-law for him to even consider what you're talking about here. In the Kikuyu, the men live in one hut, and the women and children and goats and everybody else lives in the other hut. And at night, the woman comes over to the man's hut to negotiate the day's business and things. He's got to have choice cuts of meat dipped in honey before he gets her warmed up a little bit, for negotiations. And it smooths marital issues. Honey is like top to bottom infused in their culture. So we, both of us love beekeeping anyway, so I found some money from an endowment, a wealthy man that wants to help poor people in Africa. So we were able to take his money, and I, just brought some supplies for them to do some other beekeeping things. And that was kind of funny too, because the modern beekeeping stuff, I mean, how do you put on a veil? Everybody was laughing because she had it on 90 degrees off. But then finally everybody got it straight, and we brought tools. And Njogu is making 1,000 hives right now, back in Nairobi where he lives. And those people are trying to get certification to go on the international market and hit the supermarkets with their honey. And then just to, bring it full circle, to get that certification for them as a farmer cooperative to sell their honey beyond their front door, they need like 4 tests of that honey. They have to make sure it wasn't adulterated by water. They have to check it for smell or taste of smoke because they smoke the bees. And they have to check it for E. coli. Well, ta-da, that was the one E. coli test there. So now we're just trying to make sure we're adapting, to get it adaptable for honey, so that, and that should be an easy one because honey is very soluble in water, to do a test that they then can use for marketing to a larger market beyond just their neighbors. So they were quite, keyed up on that one. And so that's just one other case, an example of how to bring in a livelihood project on top of an environmental project. And so we just went back to the Greenbelt Training Center in Nairobi, and we pulled out every plate again, the Greenbelt staff, and we verified the volunteers' numbers because they're new at this. And 99% was spot on, but we got the numbers in so we could get it in that online database and get those GIS coordinates down, sterilize all the plates to make sure everything's safe, nobody's going to get sick. So to conclude then, we are continuing through this year. We'll start another round, a whole new set of communities, and another watershed of about that size in March. So it'll be just like brand new people again, but bringing in some of those trained staff and maybe even some of those early veteran monitors to help us with the local dialects. But as I mentioned, we want to get about 160 people up to speed according to the EPA grant and what Greenbelt wants. So, we'll just open it up to a little discussion here. We got about 15 minutes. Is that true, by the way? Do we break at 5?
Yeah, we break it.
Okay, but just, from what you...
We got about 7 minutes.
7 minutes?
7
Okay.
minutes.
Well, this is the second to last slide, so we're in good shape. So, just from your point of view, what's, if someone said, what is accomplished? Is this a success? Is there more to do? And of course you have to say from whose perspective. So EPA and the Institute for Government and Sustainable Development, they're the ones that put up the moolah for this. And, just ballpark figures, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. This whole effort, including airfare and lodging, the whole 9 yards, EPA has put up $30,000. I will tell you there's many USAID projects of triple that would not produce this kind of data. But I don't want to steal the answers here. So Okay, I believe that one. They're happy, okay? Now we have Greenbelt, the Greenbelt Movement and Global Water Watch, the two NGOs that are working on this. Any thoughts? Of course, you know, you're new to this too, but you can feel free to make any comments on accomplishments from these scales, from the donors to the implementing NGOs to the community, or maybe just your opinions. Yes, sir.
As far as, I mean, the NGOs that are there, it seemed like there was a lot of involvement from everyone who was there. And they were a part of all the implementation. It wasn't just Western
Mhm.
group coming in, and the fact that they were trained in all those areas and seemed to really have a good grasp as to what was going on. In the sense of, you know, really them being able to do that in the future themselves, probably.
Yeah, I
that
agree
would
with
be a
you.
success.
Yeah. You know the term that maybe you get in your courses, like, what did we walk in as Global Water Watch and inherit? What was inherent in that community? Can you give a few descriptors? In terms, yes.
They definitely had a detailed understanding of their own geography.
Okay. That was very key. Okay, so they had, I don't know if you'd call that a technical skill or just a, survival type skill. There's been some ethnographic mapping, if you ever take an anthropology course. Go into a village and draw some maps. Get some maps from the perspective of the headman or the chief or the preacher or the woman who sells bananas, and you will get completely different maps. You know, this whole separate reality kind of thing, like what do you see, what do you experience, what do you know? And I'll tell you one thing, they know their rivers a whole lot better than we do. I mean, if we've done this in the States, you take away the roads and you just show the rivers and you ask somebody, where's your house? They have no idea. They need a road. They cannot get you there by a river. A Native American, the roads are in the way. I can tell you because, the Uchi Creek, that's the Chattahoochee Creek, and I'm, 3 days walk up this, In other words, they're more attuned to the natural world. How about socially? What's the buzzword? What did they have that we were able to fast track this project? Social capital. They have social capital. There are many forms of capital. We think of the financial, but there's natural capital and social capital and spiritual capital and all kinds of things we might think of as money in the bank, ready to be used, ready to be put to good use. So, we could buzz on that, but let me just say that this will be, we have case studies. This is the pitch, for the course. But regardless of whether I see you again or not, I hope that some of the ideas, are relevant. It's citizen science, a particular brand. I'm not crazy about that term. It's getting really bannered about a lot. It's a lot like participation. There's maybe a dozen levels of what is participation, from, top down, you participate by giving me what I want, versus the full, mature, mutual participation of a community, meeting their aspirations through you, not in an exploitive way, you engaging and getting what you need. I have to give EPA a report that says X, Y, Z. Yes, we've hit these sites. Can I do that without abusing those good people? And it looks like the answer is a resounding yes. It looks like we've hit on something. I've had about 80 international trips to 25 countries, and I can say this trip got me pumped for the next 25 years. I really, really was excited about those people and how kind-hearted and good-natured and serious they are about taking charge of their environment. Thanks a lot.